Welcome everyone to our last of 3 webinars focusing on Foundation Cloud instead of using GE Classic. Today, we will be covering data flows, batches and bulk processing, workflows, online web applications, online grant requests, and Q&As at the end. A couple of housekeeping items. We will be recording today's presentation, and I will be sending it out to all that have registered. Also, if you have questions during the presentation, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We have team members monitoring the questions, and we will make some time at the end as well to discuss some of them. I am Jessica Bopard, Impact Senior Marketing Manager, and today you will be hearing from Jeff Armstrong, our Chief Innovation Officer, along with Danielle Herring, our Innovation Strategy Manager. And with that, Jeff, I will pass it on over to you to get started.
Okay, thank you very much, Jessica. Good day, folks. I apologize in advance. My voice isn't quite at 100%. I've been feeling under the weather, but please bear with me as we jump in and talk through today's topics here. So, if you recall, 2 weeks ago, we discussed the high-level differences between Foundation Cloud grants and GE Classic. You know, the paradigm shift from a Windows application to a web application. Last week, Danielle led us through a great discussion of, what the grant records look like, the differences between tabs versus tiles now in the NXT environment, et cetera. We're not going to be going through every record screen in detail like Danielle did last week, but I did want to recap just at a high level what all these talk about the grant workflows here. And that all the same sorts of records you're used to working with in GE Classic, you still work with in Foundation Cloud grants. So on the right side here, we see the end game, if you will. We're looking to create grants, put their payments onto check runs, and do financial processing of those grants and pay them. Grants come from a lot of places, and you'll see the same nouns and verbs in Foundation Cloud grants that you're used to seeing in GE Classic. So if we start at the top there, online grant requests can come in from your portal, from your fund holders. Those generally get processed to become grants unless they are recurring grant recommendations, in which case they become designated grants. So those recurring grant requests plus other designated grants that you have in Foundation Cloud grants get processed to become grant records. You also have web applications that come in through your portal. Those become either proposal records or scholarship application records, respectively, depending on the type. And then through workflow, those get processed to become grant records. So all those same data flows that you're used to in GE Classic, you're going to continue to see those same data flows here in Foundation Cloud grants. I'm going to start out here by talking a little bit about workflows, how we take those proposal and scholarship application records in Foundation Cloud grants and create grant requests from them so that they can be queued up in check runs. I'll also be talking about some of the batch processes that we've got available in Foundation Cloud grants. After my presentation, we will jump over and have Danielle show us online grant requests and web applications as well. So that's the lineup for today. I want to start out with one more slide just talking about batch types. There are 6 different types of batches in Foundation Cloud grants. And this, we get lots of questions about this. Why do you have 6 different batch types? What's the difference between these? Why won't my docket do what I want it to, etc.? So at a high level, I just want to walk through what are all these batches, why do we need them, and what do they do? So the first 3 at the top are used for interfacing with external systems, right? Your check runs are used for financial processing. These are where you batch up grant payments to be processed in your finance system. The check run process will either create AP invoices, AP bills, or it will create journal entries for interfund transfers in the finance system. So those are for financial processing in your finance system. Encumbrance batches are another type of financial batch that are used for essentially setting aside money within a fund for future grant commitments. And if you've never used encumbrance batches, we strongly recommend you don't try without talking to your finance team first, and then maybe getting with some consultants here at Impact to discuss if this is going to be right for you or not. If you try to jump in and create encumbrance batches, you're going to create some journal entries in your finance system that are going to possibly throw your finance team for a loop. So most folks don't use encumbrance batches. If you're interested in doing this, then get a hold of us and we'll be happy to walk you through how those work. Dockets are the third type of external processing batch. And so if your foundation has a bylaw set up where, any grant that's more than, say, $5,000 has to be approved by your board, then you probably have some sort of a weekly process where you send all of those high dollar grants to your board members for approval. If you're using our Foundation Cloud community portal for processing dockets and having your board members log in and approve or decline those grant requests, you should definitely be working with dockets. If you don't have that portal, that board member portal configured in your Foundation Cloud community portal, then you really don't need to use dockets. Those are just for that external processing. So those are the three external processing batch types. At the bottom down here, we've got our internal processing batch types. So we've got proposal batches. This is when you have a lot of proposals together that you want to process in batch. You want to approve them all at the same time. You want to send them all to the board at the same time. You want to create grants for them all at the same time, maybe do correspondence, process your workflow steps on all those batches together in one group. That's a proposal batch. Scholarship batches are very similar. You use those for, your fund allocation, your workflow processing, your create grant process, your correspondence, etc. For your scholarship application records. And then finally, grant batches. Grant batches are similar to check runs and dockets in that essentially they're just a collection of grant payments, but they don't do financial processing or portal processing for board members. Essentially, they're just created for the purpose of doing batch workflow processing and correspondence. So if you want to send a whole group of grant records, if you want to send all of those fund holders an email or all of those grant recipients a letter, or if you want to update their workflow steps all at the same time, etc., you would use a grant batch. So hopefully this helps as we discuss these different batch types. These are the 6 batch types that we have in FCG. These correspond to the same 6 batch types that we have in GE Classic. It's worth noting that last one we just talked about grant batches. At one point, if you've been a customer for a while, you'll probably remember that we used to call those correspondence batches. That was incredibly confusing and limiting in the name. So we've changed that name to be called grant batches instead. So I see, it looks like we got a couple questions here. I'll come up for air real quickly before I jump in and start sharing my screen. Is there anything, Jess, that we need to address here?
Yes, in the Q&A, someone has asked, I have a question in regard to SendGrid. Our org currently uses our own SMTP server. Prior to requesting that be enabled, would we need to set up an account with SendGrid, or is that something your team handles with that request? Is the pricing structure the same as listed on the SendGrid website, or is there a different structure we should be aware of?
That's a really good question. I'm going to have to get with our engineers to get you an accurate answer. My guess off the top of my head is that you would set up your SMTP server with SendGrid so that SendGrid integrates with your SMTP server. And then our API calls to send emails would go through SendGrid and the pricing would probably be the same. But if you don't mind, go ahead and open a support ticket. And then the support team can escalate that to our engineering and sales folks and we can figure that out for you. Great question. Okay, so if that's it, then let's go ahead and let's see this in action. I'm going to walk through workflow on a proposal record, and then we'll take a look at the batch records too. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so here we are. Can everyone see my screen here? This is the Foundation Cloud grant. I'm looking at our demo sandbox 1.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Very good. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, so here in Foundation Cloud Grants, we're going to be talking about workflow today. And the workflow, the nouns and verbs should be exactly the same as you're used to in Classic. I'm going to open up a proposal record that's got a workflow already set up on it, so we can talk through some of these steps. But if you recall, instead of having tabs on a record screen, we now have tiles, and there's a tile for workflow. You'll find this workflow tile on every proposal record, on every grant record, and on every scholarship application record. So depending on the template that was chosen, you'll have the appropriate steps available. This one is using the standard proposal template. If I want to change that template, I could click on this little editor button here, the square with a pencil, and this will let me change the template. And if I wanted to go with a different one, it would say I've got to delete all the existing tasks and go with the new one, and I have to approve that. I like what I already have set up, so I'm not going to mess with this now. But that is how you would change your workflow template. You may come in and find that you have none defined for whatever or none selected. in which case you would just go right back into the screen and choose which workflow template you wanted to use. And so this one's got the standard workflow template that we have set up that has a 6-step workflow template. And so we can tell that the first step has already been completed. This was completed by Brandon West. This was the staff review. Apparently Brandon didn't put an outcome on it, but we should see that here. The next step in the process here is the due diligence step. And so then we've got a board review and a create grant. I'll open each of these individually. But if you recall from your GE Classic workflow functionality, there are standard workflow steps, and there are also workflow steps where you can do due diligence that have additional questions. We'll look at those. And there are other workflow steps which have the create grant process on them when you're in a proposal or a scholarship application to create grant records for these. There are also a couple here which drive some correspondence, some supplemental pages in the portal so that the applicant who submitted this application, we can request their 6-month follow-up and we can receive their 6-month follow-up with these workflow steps too. So let's take a look at a standard workflow step here. This is the staff review. It looks like Brandon West was assigned this task and he completed it, and he never selected an outcome, but he did complete it. Let's say it was approved. The organization that requested this grant has asked for $2,400. That was the requested amount. And it looks like at this point that we've recommended, Brandon on this workflow step recommended the $2,400. And by doing that, that set the amount recommended on the proposal record to $2,400. We'll take a look at another another workflow step here. And this one is a due diligence step. So it's got all these same fields that we're used to seeing before, but just like in Classic, you can come over to your due diligence task and fill out the additional fields that you've got for a due diligence workflow step. So in this template, we've got just 4 fields set up. We can say, what was this organization's annual gross income? We'll just put a number in here. What was this organization's GuideStar rating? Maybe they were a gold on GuideStar. We can give them that. Did we verify that they were tax exempt? Are they a valid 501c3 or whatever? And we said, yes, we did, et cetera. So we can fill out all these questions. These all get stored with the workflow step. And this is a great way for you to track what due diligence you did when before approving a grant for a proposal or for a scholarship application. I didn't finish all 4 of these, so I'm just going to go ahead and save it. It's going to save those values with the workflow step. Here we are. It's going to save those values with the workflow step, even though I didn't complete the workflow step. I just saved my progress within those due diligence tasks. Note that every workflow step can also include notifications. This is a seldom used feature in Foundation Cloud grants. So we have a lot of foundations who don't take full advantage of this. But if you like, your grant manager can get an email notification when this particular workflow step is past due, for example. Or if it's assigned to you, maybe you want one 3 days before it's due. So before it's due, I want an email sent to, let's say, to Frankie. We'll send him an email before it's due, and we'll save that. You'll notice there's no date notified here. We haven't sent that email yet. But we can set up as many notifications as we want to on each workflow step. And of course, this can be part of the template too that we set up. There's a nightly process that runs on our servers, which will send those emails to the staff members. And then each user, if I come up here to my account screen, each user has the ability to set the number of days before a workflow task is due or the number of days after a workflow task is due to be notified, depending on what their desire is there. So that's a due diligence step. We've got another step here, a board review step. This one is a create grant step, very similar to what we used to see in Classic. You know what? I don't know that I've done any fund allocation. I better set up a fund for this or I'm not going to be able to fund it. And let's say the annual fund is going to pay all $2,400 of this grant. And so now we've got it allocated. And now I can create my grant. If I go into this workflow step, I'm going to say, let's create this new grant. And it looks like the approved amount for some reason is coming up 0. Okay, my amount recommended went to 0, and I think that's because I saved this due diligence step without setting the step amount. The step amount should be the full. We've done our due diligence and determined that yes, we should be, assigning this $2,400. We should be giving them the full $2,400 that they asked for. So now that we have this recommended amount set, we can now go in and process our create grant step. So to process this, we can see that we've approved 2,400. I can grant the full 2,400 in one grant if I want to. I could do half of it now, 1,200 now, and maybe 1,200 after their 6-month follow-up when they show that they're being good stewards of the money that we granted to them. But for now, we can just do the full 2,400. It's going to be a single payment. The grant that we create, we want it to have characteristics that came from the fund, characteristics that came from the recipient, characteristics that came from the proposal itself. That way the grant can just be flagged as, this is an environmental grant, this is neighborhood beautification, this is, a minority neighborhood, whatever. And then you can go in afterwards and do some great reporting in Power BI afterwards to see last year, how much did we give to the environment, whatever, right? Generate this, it'll create a new grant record for us, and it tells us, here's our new grant record. I could click there and dive into that if I wanted to, but I'm going to go ahead and just say this was completed. I can add notes if I want to. And it looks like I've got some notifications that are going to be sent as well once this is done. So I'll save this. It's going to change the status of the proposal from approved to processed. Do I want to continue? I say yes. And now we have a processed proposal. So we've gone over just general workflow steps, due diligence workflow steps, create grant workflow steps. Configuration of your workflow templates is similar to how you used to do workflow configuration in Classic. It's just in a different area. You'll go under the settings menu to the workflow area. And here's where we can see our workflow templates. You can set up all the details to your steps and the components of those steps. What are your outcomes and all that business. And then if you'll recall, that proposal workflow that we were just looking at had due diligence questions that were on it. And so you can go set those due diligence questions here for your different record types. So that is a high-level overview of proposals. I want to quickly jump into batch and talk a little bit about these batch screens. Check runs are by far the most common batch used. Most foundations will do at least one check run per week, where they send checks over to the finance system to be processed. If you recall, we've talked in the past couple of weeks about how we don't do tabs on our record screens, we do tiles instead, but in these batch screens, we use both. So this gives you, on the one hand, it gives you a consistent look and feel across the way that you're used to seeing your batches set up in Classic. And it also just lets us lay out the data in a more user-friendly way. So for this check run, these are the payments that are on the check run. These are the payments that are available to be put onto the check run. Our finance tab is very much like Classic. It's depending on bank configuration. Our operating account bank is configured to do these check run steps, and so we can run those one at a time with these links. Once these run, every time you run one of these, it'll generate a log that we can come view on our log tab. And ongoing comments here, if you need to put some sort of a comment that I'm having trouble with this check run, you just want to note those things or whatever, you can do so here. And then other properties here on the check run, you can show your alerts and other things there. So this is the check run batch. Hopefully that's familiar. Docket batches are very similar. These are batches where you're going to send a group of your applications, a group of your grant payments to your board for approval. So here's a docket that we sent to the board for approval. It's got 6 payments on it. These payments all need to be approved by the board. On this approval tab, we show that it's going to be approved by a committee, this grant approval committee, which is your board. You can also have it set up to just have one individual approve it rather than a whole committee. But this must be a committee of 3 because the quorum required for approval is 2. So 2 out of the 3 folks on this docket have to approve each grant payment before it can be processed. If you have a grant payment that's on a docket, if you put it onto a check run for financial processing and you haven't yet reached your quorum of approvals for that particular payment, it's going to skip that particular payment as you do your processing, not create an invoice in your finance system. And it will say in the logs that this grant hasn't yet been approved by all the board members on the docket. So here you can see the folks who have submitted their approvals. These are all still pending, but this board member has theirs. We can go in and see, they approve some of these, they decline some of them, etc. We can see all the statuses there. But this is our docket batch. Encumbrance batches, I'll probably skip for today. This is how we set up our financial processing for long-term commitments, typically that span multiple fiscal years. So if I have a 4-year scholarship grant, and I want to create a 4-payment grant, and I want to make sure that the money from all 4 future years is not granted out, and I want to do some sort of processing in the finance system to encumber those funds or to put those into a temporarily restricted account. That's what the encumbrance batch is for. Proposal, grant, and scholarship batches. At a high level, they're all more or less the same. On a proposal batch, we can just pull one of these up. All the applications that we've got on all the proposals that are on this batch, there are more proposals we can add to it, but this one only had 2 that we've added to the batch. We can do our fund allocation here, and just say that these are the 2 funds that we're going to be funding all of these applications with, the totals that we're going to allocate for those funds. And then our allocation screen lets us say for this fund, we want to allocate what amounts to what projects, etc. And we can do those allocations here. Batch workflow processing. This is really powerful. So if I wanted to go through these 2 and I wanted to do a workflow step, I could process a workflow task and say these are, if I look at the templates, I can go with the supplemental workflow, and I could say I want to do the staff review, and I want to say it was completed today. The outcome was approved. So for all of these, I could just do this once and it would update the workflow, those workflow steps for all of those users, and all those proposal records. Create grants as one of your workflow steps, and you can do that in batch as well. You can select each of these, and we've got the grants already created on this one, so we don't need to create any more. You've got your logs from all your processing, comments, and properties. And then from here, we can do batch correspondence. All these batch records have correspondence. So I could do correspondence to my proposal applicants and say, congratulations, we've approved your grant for X amount, etc., and send those emails or print those letters as needed from these batch records. So we've talked through workflow, we've talked through batch. I'm going to go ahead and come up for air, see if we have any questions before I hand it on over to Danielle. Let's take a look and see Q&A.
We do have a chat. First one in the Q&A is, how do I avoid duplicate invoices being created when processing a check run?
Great question, Bonnie. We've got engineering looking into that. We've had a couple of folks report that. They go into a check run. Pardon me. They go into a check run screen. They come over to this finance tab, and then on create payments and finance system. Sometimes this process runs twice, and those processes are running at the same time, creating more than one invoice. We've got our QA and engineering teams looking into that to see if there's a bug there that we need to fix. We haven't done a whole lot of testing yet, so we don't know, but it's possible that folks are double clicking this link instead of clicking on it just once. So Bonnie, just throwing that out there as an idea. If you do have a double click habit, try to just click once. If that's what's causing this, then I'm sure our engineers are going to put something in here to stop that from, to make it where you can't double click that link, or if you do double click it, it only runs the process once. So that's one thing you can do to make sure that you're not creating duplicate invoices. If you do end up with duplicate invoices created, what I would say is you'll see in Financial Edge, if you had a check run that had 10 payments on it and it created 20 invoices in Financial Edge, what most folks are doing is deleting one of them and paying the other in Financial Edge, right? If that's what you're doing, be sure to pay the newest one and delete the older one, if that makes sense. So if you've got, for one particular fund, recipient, amount, date, fund, you can look at it and tell that it's a duplicate. Maybe it's got the same grant number on it. Just look at the newest one and keep it, pay it, and then delete the older one if that's the case, because that just makes cleanup after the fact a lot easier. But that is a known issue that we're looking into, that we've had a couple folks report. But it's bizarre because most folks aren't reporting this, so we're still not quite sure what's causing it. So Bonnie, we'll get you an update when we know more on that one. Good question.
Perfect. Bonnie actually just let us know in the chat that someone's questions are showing up under their name, even though they didn't type it. And then Emily just posted in the chat, once a workflow step is updated, say to approved, is it locked with the username and the date stamp, as opposed to GE Classic, where a user can just go change that name/date?
Oh, great question, Emily. Essentially, it works the same way. So if I go into, we were looking at this proposal number 88. If I come into this proposal and this step has already been approved, and it was approved by Brandon West, I have not logged in as Brandon West. I've logged in as GE Service, a different user, right? I've got full rights to this. I'm an administrator. I can come in and I can change this record. It doesn't lock it down and say Brandon did this and that's done and this whole thing is read-only now. Brendan can come back in after the fact and add notes if he wants to. If the date was wrong, we could change the date, etc. So it doesn't lock it once it's completed. That works the same way that it did in Classic. And then I see a follow-up question there. To create an audit trail, does the activity log show those changes then? I don't believe so. I believe the audit trail only shows changes made to the primary record and not to the workflow records. So you can tell in the activity log down here, this proposal was modified back on the 20th. The date was changed from this to that. The proposal was modified. This was yesterday. The short name was changed from test to 2024. Yeah, I went in and made some changes to make the screen prettier for today's demo. So all my changes are listed here, but my workflow changes were not. So it looks like we're not logging those workflow changes here. You bring up great questions there, Bonnie. My recommendation at this point would be to go into user voice and add new feature requests. In fact, search first, because it's possible other folks have already added feature requests around this. But very good questions. Essentially, right now, in Foundation Cloud Grants still works the same way that Classic did when it comes to these workflow records.
Perfect. That looks like it's all of our questions for now.
Okay, very good. Well, in that case, thank you all. I'm going to switch gears here and hand over the baton to Danielle to walk us through web applications and online grant requests. So Danielle, take it away.
Thank you, Jeff. Hello, everyone. Let's share my screen here. All right, you should be seeing pretty much the same screen you saw on Jeff's share.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, great. Just one sec. I wanted to pop on and say hello. But I wanted to stop my video. Sometimes my internet lags when I'm on video. So we'll talk about the online apps functional area. So online here means that these interact with the portal. So when you hear online and web, that means coming from the portal. In the online apps functional area, we have, of course, our online apps, which is used for creating your web applications. We won't dive into this too deeply today, but we did cover it in a recent LTS, Building Effective Web Applications. And we have KBAs and a white paper on the topic as well. One thing we do want to tell you on this topic today is that managing and publishing web applications in Foundation Cloud is a much improved experience compared to Classic. And that's not to disparage Classic. It's just that we continue to innovate and have new technologies available, and we take your feedback seriously. The submitted proposal apps functionality allows you to view and manage proposal web applications submitted through the Foundation Cloud Community Portal. We'll come back to this for our record overview. But first, let's talk about submitted scholarship apps. This is where you view and manage your scholarship web applications. The web portal processing queue, sorry, I'm losing my menu here. The web portal processing queue is where you view and manage portal users who need attention. So those show up in the web processing queue. This could be a new, we'll pop in here for a second. This could be a new registrant, or it could be an existing portal user whose user account needs a little bit of attention. There are two ways to access this. So you can, under the notification bell, you can go to web users need attention, or like you just saw me, you can navigate from online apps to the web processing queue. So those are the items under the online apps functional area. Let's take a deeper dive into the submitted proposal apps functionality. Here we have our summary, and in a couple of our webinars, we've explained the summary on landing pages. Each one has unique information depending on the functional area. For proposal web applications, we give you the total submitted application count, the total submitted within the last 30 days, and the total submitted that are not processed yet. you have a list of recently accessed web applications. And you can click on the link and drill down to that specific application. You also have your charts of submitted apps by profile application. And you have a graph of the submitted apps by month. Notice how each application in this grid has a checkbox to the left. This means you can use the bulk processing that Jeff was showing earlier. It works a little bit like that. You can select all by clicking to the left of applicant name, or you can hand select the ones you want just by clicking in the box. And you'll notice these options that come up with numbers in parentheses. So of my 2 records that I've created, or that I've selected, 2 of them are eligible to create or update proposals. So that would be used to create a proposal record or update an existing proposal record. Decline would be used to change the status of the records to decline. And that can happen if you don't intend to grant this, or if you need to prevent a duplicate record. So sometimes you're declining a request because you already have one that you've processed and this one's a duplicate. The set to reviewed means that the application has been reviewed and is ready to process. Promote preliminary to main. This is only for multi-stage applications. And I have 0 eligible because both of the apps that I selected are single stage applications. So for a multi-stage application, this action would promote, first, the applicant would come into the portal and fill out their preliminary pages. And then if you decide to promote that applicant and ask them to come in and fill out the pages for the main stage, you would use this. It changes the application from prelim to main, and it changes the status from submitted back to created. In the portal, the applicant will see the preliminary pages as read-only, and they can edit and submit the standard main pages. Expire will set the status to expired, and I'll actually show you export applications. It exports the applications into PDFs, which are zipped into batch files for download. So we'll go ahead and do that. So it tells you here, this will export your applications as PDFs. You have your application count, page size, orientation, portrait or landscape. Batch size is useful if you are exporting a large number of applications. The applications will be split into batches according to what you indicate here. So obviously my 2 applications aren't going to apply, but if I had 200 applications, I might want to break those down into batches of 20 applications. Include attachments. We'll go ahead and do that because one of our selected applications has attachments. And then you can bundle attachments in the PDF. And this does take a little bit of time. We'll go ahead and click export. It takes a little bit of time, but the results window lets you know what the system is up to while you're waiting. And once it's completed, that was perfect timing. Now it shows in my downloads, and if I click open file, you get a PDF for each application. And if I open the PDF, you can see here's their application, project details, final report. Here's an image that was attached to that. We go to my downloads and oh, here it was. Sorry about that. So we'll open the other one just to show you it's the same thing. Except that here is an Excel file that they attach by way of their budget. So it shows you the contents of that Excel file. Now that we've talked about the landing page, the summary, Of course, the grid, we've told you about the grid settings a little bit. And I don't think I need to explain all of those, but you can filter, you can export from here. It wouldn't be the exact same functionality, but you can export from the grid here. Let's go ahead and open a record and take a deeper dive. So each record also has a summary that shows the applicant ID, or I'm sorry, the application ID. In a single stage, it's going to show main. If this was a multi-stage, it could either be preliminary or main. The status is submitted. The applicant is a link that you can click to go to that applicant's constituent record. You can, if you view the application, that is going to be just the pages of the application. So you can, these are the tabs that you can see what they filled out in the application. And to go back, you just click exit. Most of the editing that you're going to do through an edit button is on the details tile. So let's go ahead and open that up. Our CRM key here has a red check or a red X, which means that there is no constituent record linked to this recipient. If there is a green check mark, it means that there is a recipient linked. So we can use our CRM lookup here, and we can look for Fusion Labs. And it didn't find it. So if needed, I could create a new RA constituent for this. And then it would show this as a green check mark, and I would be able to link that to my constituent record. The name and address information is fairly explanatory. This is the address block, city, state, and zip, country. And the applicant type, this indicates if the applicant is a known charity tied to a constituent code in the system. When a new CRM constituent record is created, this is used to add the appropriate CRM constituent record to the new record. The applications fields tile holds is where you can view and manage a list of fields from each page of the application. This corresponds with the actual page of the application. So you have this drop down. You can view the fields for each page of the application. You can use the ellipses to edit or delete a field. And you could use the add field to add a field to this. And if you're wondering where these fields come from, you'll notice that the application was the eligibility application. So let's go to online apps really quickly. And we'll search, and I just want to show you where those fields are coming from. All right, the eligibility application. And if you join the LTS, we went over all of these pages, all of these tiles, and the pages tile is where you have your pages. And then if you use the ellipses, then you can see the fields that are listed for that page. So just a little detour there to show you how those fields link into there. Attachments are file attachments that are uploaded by the applicant, and you can click to open them. The comments tile is pretty easy to explain. It's internal notes added by the foundation staff, and you could just use the add comment button to add a comment. Documents will hold a list of previous correspondence related to this constituent. You can add new correspondence, or you can add media here. The score tile shows each review that has been completed on the application. And the properties tile is where you can manage your alerts, and you can view associated records. So the records associated with this, you'll notice that they're blue font, which means it's interactive, and you can drill to that record by clicking on the link. So before I move on, do we have any questions on the online application functional area or submitted proposal app specifically?
There are no questions at this moment regarding that area specifically.
All right. So we'll jump into online grants now. So we'll go to grants, online grants. And these are grant requests that were submitted through the portal. Like the web portal processing queue, there are actually two ways you can navigate to this: through grants, online grants, or through the notification bell. You would click on new online grants. And this either way is going to take you to this same grid. And you'll notice the buttons here for multiple processing. You can create grants, decline, set to review, change the hold status, or clear the hold status if applicable. The landing page here shows us our statistics on number of online grants, the recently accessed records, and then our grant requests by month. Oh, I should mention here, notice that this always defaults to status equal to submitted. So you can click clear filters or click the X here if you want to clear out that filter. So let's go ahead and jump into a record here. And you'll notice there's a summary here that sums up the record information. You can edit. I'll talk more about that in a second. You can view reports here. You have a grant detail report or an online grant detail are configured here. The actions, these actions depend on the status of the record. So you're not going to see all of the actions here, but you can set to reviewed. You can create a grant, change hold status, decline, change to an interfund transfer, or completely delete the record. The options that you're not seeing here because of the status are to create a grant record. This has not been set to reviewed, and our constituents linked on this one, but it's not been set to reviewed yet, so we can't create a grant. But you're also not seeing because of the status of this is to create an interfund transfer or change it to a grant record. So the web request details, we'll go ahead and click edit so we can bring those up. This contains the summary information, such as the recipient name, which is a link to the corresponding record if one exists. The green and red check marks are on the tile. So this recipient is linked where the last one had that red X. So you can use, if it's not linked, this field you can use for your CRM lookup. We have information about the fund, the designation, and the acknowledgement block. The funding tile names the donor who made the request, the source fund the donor selected, and the target fund used to create a transfer if applicable. The fund name is a link to the FCG fund record, and the donor name links to the FCG constituent record. The payments tile details the payments requested by the donor, the amount requested, the recurring payments, number of payments requested, and the frequency of payments in the case of multiple payments. The properties tile is where we can manage alerts. We can add an alert if wanted. We can go to the associated records, and we can view an activity log. And then the comments are, again, the internal notes added by Foundation staff. And if we add a comment, then it logs our username and time, and then, of course, our comment here. So that is the quick overview of online apps and grant requests. Do we have any questions before I turn it over to close things out?
There's one
We-
question outstanding here, Danielle, and I would be happy to share my screen and walk through this one for Wendy, if that's okay.
Yes, please do.
Will do. Give me just a sec. We will share my screen. Okay, the question from Wendy was, how do you add information in characteristics? For example, sort names. I can't see where to add a new name. I've only been able to do this in Classic. So Wendy, I'm assuming you're talking about this screen in GE Classic. I went to, in GE Classic, under the config menu, I went to characteristics, and this is where we can administer these characteristics. And if I wanted to add a new area, I could add a new area or a new field of study, etc. Right? This functionality is available here. I'm going to close this and switch back to Foundation Cloud Grants. If I go to the settings menu and I go to characteristics, you may not have access to this if you don't have the right security permissions in Foundation Cloud Grants. But if you've got rights here, then the characteristics screen will take a second to load up and list all the characteristics on Classic. And then once you select one of them, it'll show you all the characteristic values on the right. So I could look at, for example, education level. This is all the education levels we have today. With any of these, I can rename them, I can delete them, I can make them inactive. I don't see one here for some college, so I'll go ahead and add a code to education level, and I'll just call it some college, and that should put it right here on the list. So hopefully that answers the question there on adding information to characteristics. If I didn't quite get it right, feel free to ask another question here. And then Lisa asks, regarding the alert on the welcome page, top right, how do we add online apps submitted? Great question, Lisa. So on the alerts up here, you want to see online apps submitted. We've got the various alerts that are available. Some of these are only available to system administrators. For example, the nightly sync process errors. We had an error last night in our syncs. Not everyone's going to see that, but this is essentially your portal processing queue for your users who have registered on the portal or who have changed their contact information on the portal. New online grant requests that have been submitted, new fund requests, if you have that feature turned on in your portal. A lot of folks don't. Pending fund investment changes, that's also optional. You can allow your fund holders to change what their investment strategies are, or to submit those requests for changes in investment strategies. And you can also see all the workflow tasks that are assigned to you. I should have talked about this when I talked about workflow, but I could see this is basically a to-do list for the user. They can see all the workflow tasks that are assigned to them and process those accordingly. Your question specifically is, how do we add online apps submitted to this list? The short answer is we can't. This is a short list of the things that our engineering team has added as possible alerts, and we don't have an alert configured for online apps submitted. I'd recommend, if you really want to see this here, go ahead and put that into user voice as a feature request, and our engineers, our product team can take a look at that and prioritize it accordingly. But when you do come into your submitted proposal apps, they're automatically filtered by status not equal created. But you can see some of these are submitted, some of these are new, some of these are processed. The ones that are in a submitted status basically don't have proposal records created for them yet, right? The same is true for your submitted scholarship apps. That submitted state means you haven't created a scholarship application record for it yet. So you could always come to this grid and filter it ahead of time and just say, instead of status not equal created, I want to see status. Where's my status field? Anyway, you can filter the grid here. You can search in that grid as well. You could sort the grid to sort by ID. This shows the oldest first. This shows the newest first. So you could see which ones have come in. So you could come to the grid and take a look there manually. But you don't get this alert notification here. One other option you've got is in your Foundation Cloud Community Portal configuration. If you're using the portal for handling your online applications, those emails that go out to your applicants that say, thank you for submitting your scholarship application. Thank you for submitting your grant application. You can set up a CC email on those, and you will get a copy of the email that gets sent to that applicant. And the applicant will go out to, Jane at the YMCA, plus it will go to your staff member who wants to see that and note those things. So a few different options there to work around that. Now, again, if you do want to see this, I'd recommend putting in a user voice ticket. And I'm looking in Q&A. I think we've got Q&A covered, Jess, and I don't see anything new in chat. So we don't have a whole lot of time left here. You want to go ahead and take back over and walk through the last couple of slides?
Yes, I can take on over right now. Let me share my screen. Thanks, Jeff and Danielle, for all of that, and thanks for everyone who's asked a lot of great questions in the Q&A. As a reminder, here's our timeline for sunsetting GE Classic. Our team has been preparing for the last 2 years and want to ensure you can do all your business processes and then some with the new Foundation Cloud and the added functionality requested by you, our users. In March of this year, we stopped splitting our development efforts between Classic and Foundation Cloud to focus on the growth of Foundation Cloud by no longer enhancing Classic. In March of 2024, we will end comprehensive support of Classic on March 1st, both for hosted and on-prem instances. Please know, if you are in the process of migrating to Foundation Cloud, we will continue to support through your migration. If you are already a Foundation Cloud customer, Admin View will go away at the end of March in 2024. This link goes away and Citrix logins will be disabled. If Impact is hosting your GE Classic and you're not moving to Foundation Cloud, we will continue to host your on-prem until March 1st, 2025. If you want to continue to use your on-prem instance beyond that, reach out to Amy Strom regarding a separate license. Sunsetting this older product allows our team to focus on growing and enhancing our products to help you grow your organization. And then last chance for some questions. I see we have one in the chat, but Jeff just answered it. I don't know if you want to come back off mute, Jeff, and reply to everyone.
Yes, I was still typing up a follow-up answer there. So hi, Autumn. Great question. Sync Harmony, I don't know of any changes that we've got on the roadmap, but there are a lot of configuration options that we can set up per foundation. And I know a lot of you, or chances are some of you may not have looked at all the options in great detail. But for example, if you see a vendor address change in your finance system, you may or may not want the corresponding constituent record in the CRM system to be updated. And so if you want to turn that feature off, there are lots of different options you can turn on and off in the Sync Harmony product. And so if you'd like us to review with you what options your foundation has turned on and which ones we ought to turn off for you, feel free to open a support case. Our engineers would be happy to work through that with you. And then there's a knowledge base article on Document 360 that talks about what all those options are, how the field mapping works as well. Lots of great detail there on exactly what Sync Harmony does and what you can turn off and turn on and configure. So my thought on that is it may be something that we can fix with some simple configuration for you. So feel free to open a support case if you'd like some further help with that.
Great, thanks, Jeff. If there's no other questions, then we can wrap up today's session. Thank you all for coming today. We will be sending out this recording and the past 2 webinar recordings all in one shortly to you all and all that have registered. So thank you so much. I hope you all have a great day and a great weekend.